As the Straw Hats and their allies are about to reach Enies' lobby, Polly sketches the island's terrain and explains that, to save Robin, the crew must reach her before she passes through the gates of justice. Since the Straw Hats are the only ones with any chance of matching the CP9 in combat, the Frankie family and the Galila foreman intend to be the first wave so the pirates can rush in. As Enies' lobby draws near, the gigantic gates of justice appears in the sky behind it. While his crewmates and allies gaze in awe, Luffy ignores the plan and strides past the first of the gates. On the other side of the island, in the Tower of Law, Chief Spandam and other CP9 agent are awaiting. Luffy easily gets past the second gate, while the Frankie family and the Galila foreman break the first gate's defenses. But by the time they reach the second gate, the Marines have the giants Oimo and Kashi to take up their posts. Overmatched in strength and size, the Frankie family send their largest fighters, the Kiriki destroyers, but are quickly defeated. On the other side of the gate, Luffy faces the collective might of Enies' lobby's 10,000 men. The Galila foreman and the leading members of the Frankie family combine their forces, and finally manage to pin down Kashi against a wall. Then, taunting Oimo, they goad him into accidentally knocking Kashi out. In the Tower of Law, Spandam receives an incomplete report about the number of people that Luffy took out, believing the enemy captain is not a threat. Lucci's party arrives and the CP9 celebrate their reunion with petty bickering and a contest of strength. Meanwhile, Luffy, defying resistance, makes his way towards the courthouse plaza. Robin and Frankie are brought before Spandam, while Luffy blasts through waves of Marines. The Galila foreman and the Frankie family eventually slip by Oimo and open the second gate. However, their joy is short-lived, as a group of Marines closes the first gate behind them. To overcome the unanticipated obstacle, Zoro changes the plan. Yokozuna bends the island's outside fence downward. Using it as a ramp, the sea train jumps over both of the gates and crash lands into Oimo's back, finishing him off and concluding everyone's arrival at the main island. As the Marines' Elite Law's watchdog unit enters the now escalating fight, the Straw Hats struggle to catch up with Luffy and the streets appear empty, abandoned by the men who were fighting Luffy. Just then, the Law's watchdog unit and a large group of other men step into their way, but the Galila foreman replace Straw Hats in battle to allow them to escape. Spandam tells Robin that her crew has come to save her and that he, despite the agreement between her and the CP9, plans on taking them prisoner. On the main road, the Straw Hats and the Frankie family proceed towards the courthouse plaza. Chopper talks with the King Bull Sodom, who notes that Usopp did not make it onto his back. Meanwhile, frustrated with his inability to move forward, Luffy slingshots himself onto the courthouse, but there, Blueno is awaiting his arrival. Oimo explains to Usopp about how he and Kashi came to support the Marine, after being told that they arrested their bosses Dory and Broggy, which the Straw Hats met before. The group board Sodom's brother Gamara and continue. Meanwhile, atop of the courthouse, the fight between Blueno and Luffy begins with the latter's first punch appearing to give more effect compared to their previous encounter. Kokoro and Chimney contact the Straw Hats and inform them of Luffy's location to instruct them on how to lower the courthouse's drawbridge. The Frankie family decides to do it, and just then, the second of Enies' lobby's elite units enters the battle, attacking Gamara, knocking him down. Luckily, Usopp turns the ties with Omoy and Kashi after revealing that truth of Dory and Broggy have never been imprisoned. Gamara, arising again despite severe injury, tells those riding him to hold on as he plans to take them to their destination. Inside the Tower of Law, Kaku and Khalifa hesitatingly eat the devil fruits that Spandam has given them. Sanji and Zoro crush a building in the King Bull's path and the party arrives at the courthouse. On the other side of the drawbridge, Spandam is brought a transponder snail phone with an urgent report. Confident that he will only be told of the Straw Hats' capture, he allows Robin and Frankie to listen in, letting them know of their rescuer's success. Meanwhile, in front of the courthouse, Zoro cuts open the building's immense stone door. On the roof, Luffy and Blueno fight on even terms until Luffy activates his newest technique, the Gear Second. The Straw Hats storm the courthouse, where the remaining members of the Frankie family fight the three-headed Judge Baskerville, and aided by Yokozuna, block the building's entrance to cut off reinforcements. Above them, Luffy's Gear 2nd is put into action against Blueno, while his crew fight their way upstairs. On the main road, the Giants have defeated the Law's watchdog unit, and with Usopp and the Galila foreman are heading for the plaza. Luffy defeats Blueno, steps past his unconscious body, and cries out for Robin to hear that he has arrived. Frankie decides to use his remaining cola to inflate his buttocks and with a giant fart shoots himself and Robin outside, onto the balcony, and into Luffy's sight, breaking his chains in the process. Luffy wants to slingshot himself over the waterfall to rescue Robin, but she tells him to stay and that only she wants to die. Usopp joins the assembling Straw Hats, and gathering on the battlements, they face Robin and the CP9, while they wait for the drawbridge to be lowered. 20 years into the past, Robin is growing up on the island of O'Hara. Her aunt, with whom she lives while her mother is away doing research, treats her poorly and other children ostracize her. Studying in the world's greatest library, the Tree of Omniscience, Robin earns the rank of a scholar in archaeology at age 8. However, when she announces her intention to help, her request is denied because of her youth. Disappointed at being rejected again, she walks along the shore, where she stumbles on Jaguar de Sol, a giant and deserted vice admiral of the Navy, and the two become friends. Sol is shocked to learn that Robin is Nico Alvia's daughter and that he has been washed up on the shores of O'Hara. Alvia, who returned to the island on a stolen Navy ship, hurries to the Tree of Omniscience to warn her colleagues of a coming Navy fleet. However, she is too late. The government ship that carried Spandam's father Spandam and his men has already arrived. They frighten the island's population into boarding an evacuation ship, while the government soldiers arrest the scholars and search the library. Professor Clover, Robin's mentor, urges Robin to board the evacuation ship, but she refuses. As it becomes clear that the scholars will not be forgiven for their forbidden research, Clover asks to be allowed to speak to the heads of the government, known as the 5 Elder Stars. Professor Clover is allowed to speak with one of the Elder Stars and reports of their research. He describes a civilization that existed hundreds of years ago and vanished at the time that the world government assumed power. He considers the collective evidence, which leads him to believe that the government tried to erase their former enemies from history. After stating that O'Hara has learned too much, the Elder Star orders Spandam to kill the professor and to give the order to destroy the island. Suddenly, the library is set aflame, while the scholars try to save the books. Robin admits to being an archaeologist and unites with her mother. However, their union does not last long. Around them, cannon shots from the Buster Calls battleships start to hail down and Alvia sends her daughter off with Sol to flee the island, while she joins the effort to save the library's knowledge. Sol fights the battleships, attempting to allow Robin to escape. She tries to board the evacuation ship, but per Spandam's orders, she is denied access. Vice Admiral Kazan, later known as Admiral Akiji, enters the scene to engage in battle with Sol. While they fight, the evacuation ship is sunk by the fanatical Vice Admiral Sakazuki, later known as Admiral Akainu. Sol, on the verge of dying, instructs Robin to flee on his raft. Persuaded by Sol's argument and Sakazuki's action, Kazan helps Robin escape. From then on, Robin lives a life on the run, not being able to trust even the kindest of people. In the present, Robin admits her greatest fear, to be seen as a burden by her crewmates and cast away, because being with her means having the world as their enemy. Finally knowing what kept her away, Sogeking, on Luffy's order, burns the government's flag, declaring war against the world government itself. Spandam regains his composure when the bridge leading to the Tower of Law is disabled midway. CP9 are then about to take their leave for the Gates of Justice when Frankie reveals the Pluton blueprints that he hid in his body. Frankie proceeds to explain that he and the previous shipwrights only kept the blueprints in case a counter is needed against another ancient weapon revived by the world government through Robin. But seeing Robin not to be the monster the rumors made her out to be, Frankie decides to gamble the fate of the world on the Straw Hats' resolve to save their friend and burns the blueprints. But then, an distracted Frankie finds himself shoved off the balcony by a furious Spandam. Just then, Kokoro runs Rocketman up the drawbridge, and the sea train hits Frankie, After emerging from the rubble, the Straw Hats and Frankie are greeted by the blabbermouth CP9 agent Fukuru as he reveals that Spandam has given CP9 orders to execute the intruders and that he and Lucci are taking Robin to the gates of justice. As Luffy chases after Robin, the Straw Hats and Frankie pursue the keys to unlock her handcuffs, and each encounter a CP9 member. At the same time, Chimney and her pet rabbit Gonbi accidentally find a secret passage and end up following Spandam and Lucci. Nami and Sanji have their respective encounters with Komodori and Khalifa while Frankie runs into Fukuru. As Zoro engages Kaku in a sword fight, Usopp attempts to steal a key from the CP9 agent Jabra, but the assassin wakes up and reveals himself to have the power of the dog fruit model, Wolf. At the same time, Kaku reveals to Zoro his ox fruit model, Giraffe. But after causing himself and Zoro to fall to the floor where Usopp and Jabra are, and he accidentally places a pair of sea stone handcuffs on him and Zoro. Finding themselves handcuffed after Kaku's kick damaged the Tower of Law, Zoro and Usopp learn that each of the keys are numbered. But as neither Kaku nor Jabura have the key needed to free their prey from their sea stone handcuffs, the two CP9 members are forced to resume the fight. Chopper arrives at that time and is sent off to obtain the second key from one of the other assassins. Chopper comes across Nami as she attempted to flee Komodori after stealing the third key, knocking the CP9 operative out. Soon after, Nami and Chopper find Sanji, who admits he could not bring himself to harm a woman. So Nami decides to take over and fight Khalifa. Luffy is saved from drowning by Chimney and Gonbi as they show him to the underground passage leading to the gates of justice. Not having the key to access it, he activates his Gear 3rd to break through the gate leading to the passage. Meanwhile, low on reserves as he is down to the last drop of cola, Frankie gets into a fist fight with Fukuro as their scuffle takes them to the kitchen. At the same time, having lost his Rumble Ball boost, Chopper is knocked into the room by Komodori but soon manages to give Frankie the 3 cola bottles he needs to turn the tide as the cyborg knocks Fukuro outside the tower. They take their battle outside and a furious Fukuro instead attempts to kill Frankie by crushing him against the Tower of Law, only for Frankie to hold onto his opponent with his dividable legs and use his air pressure cannon to propel his opponent to the ground. Komodori beats Chopper to submission before preparing for the death blow. But Chopper, remembering Kureha warning him not to take the risk again after learning of the devastation he caused the first time he did it, is left with no recourse but to use a third Rumble Ball with the thought to protect his friends. As a consequence, Chopper transforms into an oversized and purely instinct-driven version of himself that Kureha had best described as a monster. He easily defeats Komodori before he then knocks out Frankie and begins to climb up the outer wall. Meanwhile, after being momentarily weakened, Khalifa explains her ingestion of the bubble fruit allowed her to weaken her opponent's body of any strength, using her touch to make Nami unable to walk. At the same time, covering for Spandam so he can get Robin to the gates of justice, Lucci waits for Luffy as the pirate eventually reaches his location. At the courthouse plaza, the Marines capture the Straw Hats' allies in the courthouse. Almost on the bridge of hesitation, Spandam tries to contact the CP9 members at the tower to know what is going on with the pirates. But he learns too late that he accidentally invoked a buster call, causing 10 battleships and 5 vice-admirals to be dispatched to Enies' lobby. As Robin attempts to reason with him of what will happen to Enies' lobby once the buster call is invoked, Spandam makes another mistake by informing the whole island of the coming threat while admitting that he does not care if the 10,000 Navy soldiers under him are obliterated in process, which causes the Navy soldiers to leave their prisoners and flee. The CP9 operatives decide to end their respective matches quickly while Luffy begins his fight against Lucci. Before Khalifa could deliver the death blow, Nami uses her Mirage Tempo to distract her before Chopper crashes through the wall. After attacking both the CP9 operative and an astonished Nami, Nami uses her Rain Tempo to restore herself and create 4 illusionary doubles of herself. She then strikes Khalifa by a horizontal lightning bolt before Frankie arrives, and they conceive a plan to save Chopper as they find him in the room where the still handcuffed Zoro and Usopp are holding their own against Kaku and Jabra. Frankie uses his air pressure cannon to blast Chopper outside into the seawater and Nami frees Zoro and Usopp from their shackles. Gondi appear outside the secret passage and lead Franky to Kokoro and the tunnel. Past the room where Luffy is fighting Lucci, Spandam uses Funk Freed to stop Robin's attempted escape and proceeds to drag her by her hair to the gates of justice. As Sanji takes over fighting Jabra respond by making his foot red hot to unveil his newest technique, Diable Jam, whose intense heat bypasses Jabra's defenses and leads to his defeat. Franky arrives and offers his help, but Luffy insists that Franky save Robin. Reminded of himself when he was young and tried to stop the sea train from carrying away his mentor, Franky agrees. After being relentlessly attacked, while hearing Kaku insulting Robin, Zoro's resulting rage manifested itself and unveils his new sword style, Demon Aura 9 sword style Ashura, and takes him out and takes the number 5 key. Meanwhile, when Lucci assumes his Beastman form, Luffy activates second gear to give Franky the needed time to escape as he and the CP9 agent face each other. Spandam proudly reveals to Robin that he is the son of Spandame, the previous CP9 head who was responsible for the Buster Call at O'Hara. This causes Robin to be livid and Franky is seemingly taken out by a mine Spandam placed. But at the last second, an explosive projectile hits the back of his head and the Marines gathered around him, while the culprit is revealed to be Usopp. Robin attempts to run towards the other side the bridge before Franky saves her from being shot by the Marines, freeing her from handcuffs to vent out her rage on Spandam. As Usopp leaves to regroup with the others, he hears something before an explosion occurs. Meanwhile, Lucci learns the double-edged nature of Luffy's second gear and tears a hole into a wall of the underwater chamber to flood the passageway as the Buster Call on Enies lobby commences. The Buster Call ships have reached Enies lobby, passing to Bridge of Hesitation to spare Robin as she is traumatized by the onslaught she is forced to witness a second time in her life. At the same time, after Luffy's second gear ended, Lucci offers him a chance to run away and save his friends, but Luffy activate his gear third instead. Suddenly the Buster Call ships witness a giant fist punching out of the pillar. After Rob Lucci is knocked into his ship by Luffy's enlarged fist, Vice Admiral Doberman orders his men to stand down and proceeds to reveal to his men that 15 years ago, Rob Lucci is sent as an emissary of the world government to help a country at war with pirates. Prior to his arrival, 500 of the country's soldiers were taken hostage with the pirates' captain using them to take the king's throne. But allowing himself to be captured, believing that the soldiers are guilty of being weak, Lucci murdered all 500 hostages before executing the pirates' captain. Luffy proceeds to fight Lucci as Enigmo orders the ships to redirect their cannons to the gradually damaged vessel. After explaining his reasons to support the Straw Hats, Franky cripples Spandam before he and Robin decide to take the convoy ship. Meanwhile, having reached the entry point of Enies lobby, the Galila foreman, the Franky family, and the Giants are forced to watch the fleeing Marines allowed into 3 Buster Calls battleships that soon drift out into position. In the underground passage, the drowning group of Nami, Zoro, Usopp, Sanji, Chopper, Chimney, and Gonbi are about to lose hope when they are saved by a mermaid, revealed to be Kokoro. She explains that mermaids like her are able to walk on land after 30 years' time, but as Sanji joins the group, one of the ships announces that the Straw Hats' accomplices has been wiped out along with the main gate. This breaks Franky's heart to hear his gang have been slaughtered as he yells for Luffy that he better not get himself killed. As the fleet turns its attention toward the Bridge of Hesitation, having managed to wound Lucci in the legs, Luffy decides to finish the fight in second gear form. Lucci makes use of his most powerful technique, the Six Kings Gun. Having cut off the Straw Hats' captain's retreat, the Marines send their 200 captains and commanders to recapture Robin while killing off the Straw Hats. Robin joins her friends in fighting the Marines' strongest fighters. Meanwhile, after enduring punishing blows from Lucci, Luffy is at his limit and finally falls to the ground with Usopp horrified by the sight. An unmasked Usopp sees Luffy lying in the dust in front of Lucci and cries out to him, telling him to get back up. Luffy then stands back up and activates his second gear, engaging Lucci in a final fist fight, before he delivers a barrage of blows strong enough to break through Lucci's iron body technique. As everyone is in awe of Luffy defeating Rob Lucci, it revealed by transponder snail loudspeakers that the Franky family and Galila foreman faked their deaths while having found a means of escape. The Buster Call ships then destroy what remained of the place, until Usopp once more hears a voice calling out for him and the rest of the Straw Hats to jump into the ocean. Despite many thinking Usopp had gone mad, the others start to hear it too, with Robin using her devil fruit powers to toss Luffy out of the pillar as everything jumps to the source of the mysterious voice, the Going Merry. Despite appearing to have sunk at Water 7, the Going Merry somehow made it to Enies lobby, with the Straw Hats have little time to speculate how their ship arrived as a livid span dam. Revealed to have survived being crushed by Funk Freed, orders the Buster Call battleships to destroy Robin and the Straw Hats, but it turned out Sanji used his crew to fight with the Marines elite to control the room for the Gates of Justice and closed it to restore the whirlpools. After Robin uses her devil fruit powers to break Spandam's spine, the Straw Hats succeed with their escape with the Buster Call fleet defeated. With Enies lobby and the Buster Call fleet out of sight, the Straw Hats meet up with Iceberg on the Galileo Company ship. By then, the Going Merry finally begins to break apart and Luffy begs the shipwrights to repair it. But Iceberg, having heard the mysterious voice, reveals that he found the Going Merry during Aqua Laguna and did everything in his power to fix it at the ship's behest. Iceberg convincing Luffy to let the Going Merry go, they give it a proper burial by setting it ablaze as he and the other Straw Hats. Reminiscing about their time with the Going Merry, it sink to the bottom of the sea. 2 days later, after returning to Water 7, Frankie learns of Iceberg's plan to make the city into a ship in response of Aqua Laguna's intensity. Frankie then arrives and explains to the Straw Hats that he used the money he stolen from them to buy a highly valuable piece of bark from the indestructible treasure tree Atom, and decided to give his creation to the Straw Hats for their use. But the joyful moment is short-lived and a Marine platoon under Vice Admiral Garp arrives to Water 7. Garp breaks into the Straw Hats' quarters and wakes up Luffy with a punch, who further shocks everyone when he calls Garp his grandfather. After Luffy's harsh upbringing methods is explained, and Garp criticizes his grandson's choice to become a pirate, Zoro attempts to attack the Navy soldiers until he and Luffy end up facing Garp's 2 personal attendants, Kobe and Helmeppo. While he and his soldiers proceed to repair the wall he destroyed, Garp makes things more astonishing by revealing that Luffy was saved from Captain Smoker in Logue Town by Monkey D. Dragon. Although Luffy does not know him, Robin explains to Luffy that Dragon is the leader of a rebel faction usurping the world government and is among the government's most wanted criminals. Garp returns to his ship, and after they encourage him to get strong enough to capture them, Kobe takes his leave while telling Luffy that he will meet him again in the New World. Later, as the Straw Hats start a party at the Galileo's company pool with the Frankie gang and the Giants invited, Robin is approached by Akiji, who speaks to her through a wall. He explains while he was forced as a naval officer to kill Saul, his best friend, he also let her escape to honor him so she can find a place to belong. He then expresses relief that she found her place within the Straw Hats before taking his leave to see what will come from it. A fleet of Navy ships could not keep red-haired Shanks from meeting with Whitebeard, and after the least experienced crew members under Whitebeard are knocked out by Shanks's hockey, he offers Whitebeard a large bottle of sake as a peace offering, and then explains his reason to see Whitebeard is to make a request for him to not have Ace chase down Blackbeard. But Whitebeard explains he intends to teach Blackbeard a lesson and laughed off his request, causing a clash between him and Shanks. Back at Water 7, Iceberg and the Galileo Company help Frankie to build the Straw Hats' new ship as the crew head out into the city to gather supplies. Meanwhile, having spent his time practicing scenarios to rejoin the Straw Hats, Usopp's first attempt fails. The next day, the Straw Hats learn the ship is finished and were about to head to the shore when the Frankie family arrive with bad news. It turned out all Straw Hat members have a bounty, with Frankie also included. As the Frankie family fear their leader might end up getting captured again, they plead with Luffy to take Frankie with him by any means. When the Straw Hats arrive at the coast, Iceberg shows them the ship while Frankie is nowhere to be seen. Iceberg explained that Frankie is hiding because if he were asked face to face to join the crew, he would not be able to refuse as he wants to go but thinks of staying in Water 7 as his responsibility. In response, Frankie's men lure him to the Straw Hats as he chase after them, before Sanji and Zoro have him shot in front of the new ship. Luffy has the swimsuit and offers to return it to Frankie if he agrees to join the crew. Frankie still refuses to the point of being unashamed of being naked. But taking Iceberg's suggestion to heart, Robin uses her devil fruit powers to grab Frankie by the testicles and threatening to crush them if he continues to refuse. He is then confronted by Iceberg revealing that the only real reason why he wants to stay is out of guilt and needs to forgive himself so he can join the Straw Hats and see his dream through. Luffy then returns the swimsuit to Frankie, who regains his usual self as he subsequently agrees to join the crew. With Frankie now a member of the Straw Hats, the crew set sail to evade Garp as he returned to Water 7 under direct orders from Fleet Admiral Sengoku. When Frankie notices that Usopp had not yet returned to them, Zoro explained that the only way they can welcome him back is if his first words are an apology. But as Usopp runs to the dock, his window of opportunity is slowly closing as the Straw Hats attempt to fend off the barrage of cannonballs personally thrown by Garp. When Usopp arrives, he attempts to rejoin the crew as if nothing happened, with his words falling on deaf ears. Only after Usopp realizes his faults and begs for forgiveness that a tearful Luffy reaches out and pulls him aboard. With the crew back together, the Straw Hats can intensify their efforts to escape while agreeing to use the name that Iceberg provided, the Thousand Sunny. Frankie goes to the engine room to activate one of its special abilities while Luffy says goodbyes to his grandfather, Kobe, and everyone on Water 7. The Sunny's emergency acceleration device activates and blasts away. Some time later, as the crew celebrate while preparing to head towards Fishman Island, their wanted posters circulate around the world while everyone in their hometowns Alabasta and Smoker have heard the crew's deeds at Enies lobby. The posters eventually reach the revolutionaries with their leader Monkey D. Dragon impressed and confident he and Luffy will cross paths in the future. 3 days earlier, Blackbeard receives the news of the Straw Hats' devastation of Enies lobby and decides to pursue them. However, his plans are interrupted by Ace, who has come to avenge Blackbeard's murder of a crewmate. Ordering his men back after attempting to convince Ace to join his crew, Blackbeard justifies his actions because his crewmate ate a devil fruit whose powers he long sought for. Blackbeard then proceeds to destroy the village by revealing the power he have obtained from killing his friend, the dark fruit, and overwhelms Ace. The two use their strongest attacks on each other. With the island devastated and Ace defeated, the event would influence the changes that will come.